All right, guys, you want to know how to evaluate your own property and figure out whether solar is a good idea? I'm going to walk you through the whole process right now. The first thing you need to do is you need to figure out where you are. Okay. Get your latitude and longitude. That's information that will come back around later. We're going to use it. We're going to plug that into a website that's going to help us figure all this stuff out. The next thing you need to do is you need to look at the area that you're going to be mounting these solar panels on and say, okay, is it going on a roof? What direction is that roof facing? Or do I have a hillside that I'm going to put it on? When you're talking about cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, you typically want to point your panels due south, but you can actually go 30 degrees east or west of due south and lose very little in terms of your overall production. You want to think about shading issues. If you shade a solar panel, it kills the production. And if you have a string inverter, which is like the whole string of panels is on one inverter, it's going to kill the entire array production. So you really want to be cognizant of what type of shading issues do I have in this system. Do I need to go cut some trees down? Do I need to raise the array up and get it to where the shadow for the tree line over there goes underneath it? What do I need to do? You have to cut out shade. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Or you just have to understand, hey, I just might as well take my production after 3 p.m. when that tree shades my roof. I'm just not going to get anything. I'll get a little bit, but I'm not going to get enough to write home about. So evaluate shading in the area. Make sure that you can eliminate that. The next thing you want to do, so we talked about the cardinal direction. Azimuth is like the number, right? So 180 degrees due south, that is your azimuth. If I go 30 degrees east or 30 degrees west, so that would be 150 degrees all the way out to 210 degrees, I can still do that and not really lose a ton of production. That's literally percentage points, okay? Like single digit below 3 percentage points. So once I have my azimuth, the next thing I want to look at is my tilt. And so this is the angle that the panel is actually going to be set at. And that angle is very important because we have something that we call the angle of irradiance. The angle of irradiance is the angle that the sunlight is coming down, and you want your panel to be at a 90 degree to that. So the sunlight comes in, you want it to be 90 degrees for as much as possible. That's why tilt is important. So a lot of people say, okay, well, if you're going to go fixed tilt, you just set it at your latitude. If you live at latitude 34, you put your panels at 34. And that's pretty close to optimal. It's not optimal. There is a formula that you can actually plug in and say, okay, if I'm going to have fixed tilt, this is where I need to be. If I'm going to adjust it twice a year, here are my 2 angles and the dates. If I'm going to adjust it 4 times a year, here's my angles and the dates. So there's programs out there to help you figure all of that out, but that's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today is finding out what tilt do we need to plug in. If I have a roof and I'm going to mount those panels on the roof, well, the angle of that roof is my tilt angle, and there's nothing I can do about it. If I'm going to do a ground mount system, I can typically go with whatever angle that I want. However, if I'm going on a hillside, I might not be able to go as flat as I would like, just because then I'm designing a ground mount system that might have a problem with wind. So once I have those 2 pieces of information, I've got my tilt and I've got my azimuth. What I want to do is I want to go to a program called PV Watts. It's run by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL, and the website is pvwatts.nrel.gov. You put your latitude and longitude in. So remember, we had to figure out where we were at the beginning. You put that in, you put your angle, you put your azimuth, and at the top where it's going to ask you your array size, you put 1 kilowatt. So that the entry number is 1. What we're doing there is we're figuring out for every 1,000 watts of solar panels that I put in, this is what I'm going to generate over the course of the year. You hit that results button. You can play with the system losses. The standard there is 14. I typically plug in 20% because I want to say this is what your panels are going to do over the next 20, 25 years. But 14% is perfectly fine for just figuring out where you're starting. Once you have that number, let's just say that it's 1,200 kilowatt hours per year for every 1 kilowatt of solar panels that you put in. If you're evaluating a grid tied system, you can then take your actual power bill, add up the kilowatt hours for the last 12 months. Let's just say it's 1,500 kilowatt hours per month on average. Well, if I know that my system is going to generate 1,200 kilowatt hours per year. I take that 1,500 kilowatt hours, multiply it times 12 months, divide it by 1,200, and the result is how many thousands of watts or how many kilowatts of solar panels that I actually need to put into that system. Okay. What you'll find is that in most places in the United States, you're going to average about 4 sun hours per day. Okay. There's 365 days per year. And then you're going to downrate that production somewhere between 14 and 20%. So you're going to end up about 1,200, right? That's the reason why I use that number is most places are going to be in the neighborhood of 1,200 kilowatt hours per year for every 1,000 watts that they put in. And so once you do that math, now you know, okay, my azimuth is 122 and my angle is 25. I plug those numbers in. Oh, I'm only going to be able to get 900 kilowatt hours per year out of that system. But you just do the math the same way. You add up your last 12 months, you divide that by 900. That's how many kilowatts of solar panels you need. It's as simple as that. There's another tool that I really like. It's called the Sunseeker app. You can get it on Android or on Apple phones. And you literally go outside and it's augmented reality. You can take your camera and turn it on and it will overlay through what you're looking at what the winter and summer solstice lines of the sun are for your property. It's a great thing. And it really shows you, depending on where you are, exactly what kind of shading issues you might have. So you get out there, you've got a tree line, off in the distance. And it's like, okay, after 10 a.m. in the spring and the fall, I've got clear sun the rest of the day. And in the summer, the sun comes up over those trees because it's higher in the sky. So they're not a problem at all. And so with that data, you can actually make an informed decision on, okay, yes, I want to move forward with evaluating the individual components and what kind of cost I'm looking at. Now, there is one caveat. If you're an off-grid person or you're designing a system or evaluating a property that's going to be off-grid, maximizing your production for year-round probably isn't the best bet. You want to either maximize in the summer if you're in a cooling climate or in the winter if you're in a heating climate. And so you might play around with both the azimuth and the tilt to maximize the production when you need the most energy versus maximizing your annual production. On a grid-tied system, you want to maximize annual production for those net metering credits. But for an off-grid system, you want to maximize production when you need it. Well, guys, that's all I've got. I hope you found some value in the video today. Hit that like button if you did. If you want more of this type of thing, hit subscribe. These are the kind of things that I talk about. You can find me at hackmyhomestead.com, Hack My Homestead on Instagram, and the Hack My Homestead podcast. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.